Hello, Airbus Cockpit Coach here, and welcome to the channel. Most pilots trust the primary flight display, but in the Airbus A320, one little scale might be leading you into serious danger. Today we're diving into the VDEV trap and looking at how our vertical deviation scale differs from the ILS Glideslope and why barometric pressure could make or break your approach. Before we get going, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. Please give the video a like. I've currently got the simulator paused on approach to Nice's runway 048 on the RMP approach. We have final lap mode engaged, and you'll see here on the primary flight display we've got our VDEV scale up, and we're nicely tracking our brick, which indicates our vertical profile. So actually we're looking on profile at the moment, nothing to worry about. Or is there? So the VDEV scale is very similar to that of the Glideslope deviation scale in appearance. When you fly an ILS, the Glideslope you see depicted on the primary flight display comes from a radio beam from the ground that shows your angular deviation in degrees from the intended descent path, which guides you down nicely onto the touchdown zone of the runway. The ILS scale, or Glideslope scale, shows angular deviation. And on the ILS, where we'd have a dot above or below, that would show roughly 0.35 degrees above or below path. So we measure that in degrees. So the Glideslope is live, self-correcting. It's part of a precision approach, so as long as your instruments work, it's reliable. But when we fly a non-precision approach, as we are now, the primary flight display displays the VDEV scale, and that's not angular. So the VDEV is showing us deviation in feet above or below a baro calculated descent path. So a descent path based on a barometric pressure. It looks very similar to the Glideslope. We have a deviation indicator, we have a scale, but it's not showing degrees. This is showing how many feet you are from a calculated path based on barometric data. So each one of these white lines here depicts you've got 100 feet and you've got 200 feet deviation either way. So it's not degrees as you get with the Glideslope. Now the first trap is actually pilots can get complacent. You may have flown a lot of Glideslope approaches, ILS approaches recently, and you may treat the VDEV scale in the same way as you treat the Glideslope scale. So we have a tolerance which is acceptable on the Glideslope. You can be a dot above or below and recover from that. That's reasonably easy to do, depending on how far out you are, by making slight pitch changes with the aircraft. On the VDEV scale, if you are tracking a dot below there, you're 100 feet out, and that's not so easy to correct from, especially if you're getting closer to the runway. So the deviation is much greater generally on the VDEV scale than on the Glideslope scale. And that's the first catch. We mentioned barometric pressure earlier, and this is where it gets risky. So the VDEV path is only as good as the QNH you input up here. So we've got 1013 in there today. So if you put in the wrong pressure setting, the system thinks you're higher or lower than you actually are. So today I have actually done that. So I've inputted 1013, although outside today the pressure is 1003 millibars. And that could be, and that has been in the past, in the real world, a cause of mistakes and some serious incidents. So it's simple interpretation of what air traffic control have told us: 1003, 1013. Reading that back incorrectly, not getting picked up, has led to some serious issues regarding control flight into terrain. So by entering 1013 instead of 1003, we've actually got a 300 feet difference, where the aircraft thinks at our top of descent point it was 300 feet too high, essentially. The aircraft has descended early, following that lower profile, 300 feet lower. It's descending us too soon, so 1 QNH equals dangerous descent path on the non-precision approach. Now, coming into Nice today, we've got no terrain ahead of us there today, no issues there. But on other approaches we could be busting minimum descent altitudes, we could be getting close to obstacles that maybe lie between us and the runway, so generally non-precision approaches are designed to be based around terrain where the glide slope signals localizer won't work, and there's quite often obstacles in the way, so this is where it can get dangerous. But ultimately at the moment, whilst we look on profile there, so the VDEV scale is showing actually, yep, that block's in the middle, we're tracking our profile correctly. We are, because of the QNH misinterpretation and wrong input, we are tracking 300 feet below our intended path. So I'm going to unpause the sim now and let this fly down, and we'll see the impact of that. Should see that we get dangerously low before the runway. So it's really important to verify our QNH before descent, make sure that's in, accurate and cross-checked.
2,500.
We want to be cross-checking our charts, making sure we're adhering to all the step downs. Radio altimeter can be helpful, obviously it's kicked in now, but again, as we pass over varying heights of terrain beneath us, it's not showing us our true altitude in relation to the path, so that can be helpful, but not always. But it shows obviously with a difference there, but it's not in relation to the sea level, if you like. And on some non-precision approaches there is very high terrain in between us and the runway, so generally you can expect that to be, you can expect the radio altimeter to be bouncing around and not being particularly helpful. It's important not to trust the VDEV scale unless the descent path perfectly matches that of the profile. If you've got waypoints along the route you can cross-check with in terms of your heights, if you are able to do that approximately using the information, you should do. But again, because we're tracking what we think is sensible, we're on the right pressure setting, we're not actually going to notice that deviation in altitude is incorrect. It really can be quite dangerous if it's not picked up. Now you see ahead of us we've got the PAPI lights, we've got 4 reds there indicated at the moment, so there's our first indication that something's not quite right here. Although in the Microsoft Flight Simulator world, often issues with PAPI lights, so you might think, okay, that's okay. Scenery issue, we will live with that. In the real world, yeah, 4 reds, we'll be thinking, okay, what's wrong here? You can see the profile starting to look a little bit low. Again, it's quite difficult to judge with the sea as well, because they flat around it. And different illusions can sort of make your mind wander a little bit and think, okay, and try and justify why that's looking like it is, but the reality is we are 300 feet too low. And we should get a GPWS warning at some point as we get too low and start to get dangerously close to the sea. So a very simple error can lead to a very dangerous situation on the non-precision approach, so it's worth being aware of that and the importance to cross-check this. Gotta go around altitude in, so we're going to need it. So we're 3,000 feet set. EK memo landing, no blue.
500.
Yeah, that's starting to look low now. The sea is coming up quickly in front of us.
Too low, terrain.
Go around flaps. Mantoga SRS nav, auto thrust blue, positive climb, gear up. Flaps 3, speed checks flaps 3. Flaps 2, speed checks flaps 2. Flaps up. I'll put the aircraft back into autopilot, so I can continue talking and reducing my workload. But yeah, so you can see the effects of that there. We would have ended up plunging into the sea short of the runway as a result of that very simple QNH incorrect input. Now the same thing could happen if you use the the VDEV scale like a glideslope scale, and then due to the differences in deviation between the two, you can end up in a bad situation. And again, get too close to the ground or be way too high. So whilst the VDEV scale might look familiar, it's not your glideslope. It's a calculation, and if that calculation is wrong, so is your approach. Respect the charts and respect the baro. If it looks wrong, go around. If you have any questions on that at all, please drop them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer those. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button to stay up to date with the latest content. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.